Protests are spreading, the currency is collapsing, and the internet has gone dark. This is more than a revolt. It's a challenge to the entire system. And for the first time in decades, fear is cracking. Stay with us, because what happens next could change everything. Back in 1979, the streets of Iran changed the course of history. A monarchy that had ruled for decades collapsed. A revolution swept away a US-backed Shah, and in its place rose an Islamic republic, built on clerical rule, revolutionary ideology, and the promise of justice for the oppressed. For nearly half a century, that system has survived war, sanctions, assassinations, uprisings, and isolation. But today, something feels different. As 2025 draws to a close, Iran is once again on fire. Protests are spreading. The currency is collapsing. The internet has gone dark, and the government is reaching for the same tools it always has: force, fear, and blame. The question gripping the world right now isn't whether Iran is unstable. It's whether this moment represents the most serious test of the Islamic Republic since its birth. To understand what's happening now, you have to understand how Iran got here. The Islamic Republic was not born in peace. It was born in confrontation. In 1979, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and declared a new political order, one where religious authority ruled above the ballot box. Almost immediately, Iran collided with the West. American diplomats were taken hostage. Sanctions followed. Trust evaporated. Then came the war with Iraq, 8 brutal years beginning in 1980. Trenches, chemical weapons, 500,000 dead. That war didn't just scar Iran's cities. It hardened its political system. It taught the regime that survival required militarization, discipline, and repression. From that moment on, crisis became identity. Every decade brought a new shock. Earthquakes that killed tens of thousands. Sanctions that strangled the economy. Nuclear standoffs with the West. Proxy wars across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. And every time the system endured. Until now. The protests that erupted in late December 2025 did not begin with ideology. They began with prices. Iran's currency, the rial, collapsed to historic lows. Over 1.4 million rials to $1. For ordinary Iranians, that wasn't an abstract number. It meant food prices up more than 70%, inflation hovering near 40%, wages that no longer covered rent, fuel, or medicine. The first protesters weren't students or activists. They were shopkeepers, merchants in Tehran's Grand Bazaar. And that matters. Historically, when Iran's bazaar closes, governments fall. Taxi drivers, factory workers, pensioners, people who once tolerated politics suddenly couldn't tolerate poverty. As one driver put it bluntly, the prices of dairy went up 6 times this year. Some things, 10 times. How are we supposed to live? That question echoed across the country. At first, the chants were economic. But Iran has a long memory. Economic pain doesn't stay economic for long. Within days, the slogans changed. From lower prices, to death to corruption, to outright rejection of clerical rule. And then came something even more shocking. Chants in support of Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah. For a generation raised under the Islamic Republic, this wasn't nostalgia for monarchy. It was rejection of the present, a way of saying anything but this. That alone terrified the authorities, because it signaled something dangerous, a breakdown in fear. The state's response was swift and familiar. Security forces moved in. Protests were broken up. Live ammunition was reportedly used. Then came the blackout. Internet access across Iran plunged into darkness, the most severe shutdown in years. Why? Because in modern revolutions, information is oxygen. Without video, without messaging apps, without coordination, protests suffocate. The government framed the unrest as foreign-driven. They blamed the United States, Israel, terrorist infiltrators. They promised to release confessions. They vowed to hunt down organizers. State media reported over 100 security personnel killed. Activists claimed hundreds of protesters dead. The true numbers remain hidden, buried behind censorship and fear. Why this time is different? On the surface, this looks like a grim replay of 2019 or 2022 or 2009. Protest, repression, survival. But beneath the surface, three forces make this moment uniquely dangerous for the Islamic Republic. First, the state is weaker than it looks. In June 2025, Iran fought a 12-day war with Israel. It did not go as planned. Iran's proxies were degraded. Its air defenses were exposed. Its leadership suffered losses. Then came U.S. involvement, strikes that shattered Iran's sense of deterrence. For decades, Iran projected strength through distance, fighting enemies elsewhere. Now, the war came close to home. That matters. A regime that feels vulnerable externally is far more brittle internally. Second, a looming succession crisis. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is 86 years old. During the recent war, he vanished from public view. In a system built on the myth of an omnipresent leader, absence speaks louder than speeches. Behind closed doors, factions are maneuvering. Clerics, hardline nationalists, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The question is no longer if change is coming. It's what kind. Iran may be approaching a transformation, not toward democracy, but toward a militarized nationalist state ruled less by clerics and more by security forces. That uncertainty weakens cohesion at the top. Third, a credible external threat. This is perhaps the most explosive variable. U.S. President Donald Trump has openly warned that if Iran massacres protesters, military action is on the table. In the past, Iranian leaders might have dismissed that as bluster. They can't anymore. Iran's foreign minister says the country is ready for war, but also ready for dialogue. That dual message reveals anxiety. Targets exist. Basic militia infrastructure. Commanders tied to repression. Sanctions enforcement that could choke Iran's oil exports. The threat is no longer theoretical. One of the most overlooked battlegrounds right now isn't missiles. It's bandwidth. Iran has a long history of weaponizing internet shutdowns to hide repression. But this time, the blackout is colliding with geopolitics. The Trump administration has cut funding to organizations that once provided VPN access, circumvention tools, internet freedom support. Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite network, has punched holes in censorship before. But Starlink terminals are scarce, risky to use, and reportedly being jammed by military-grade technology. Experts warn that focusing only on Starlink is a mistake. Low-tech tools, VPNs, peer-to-peer networks, are often more effective and scalable. Without sustained support, abuses go undocumented, and silence benefits only one side. Here's the paradox. Iran is exploding, but it has no single leader. And that's not accidental. For decades, the state systematically crushed unions, student groups, NGOs, political parties. Leadership became a death sentence. Instead, today's movement is networked, decentralized, and unpredictable. Reza Pahlavi, the most visible figure, charismatic, exiled, controversial. He now calls for seizing city centers. Supporters see hope. Critics see recklessness. He has a name, but not an organization inside Iran. BMEK, discredited inside the country, feared for its past alliances. Loud abroad, weak at home. Secular coalitions, principled, democratic, but largely absent from Iran's streets. Ethnic minorities, Kurds, Baluchis, historically marginalized, often at the forefront and the highest risk. This fragmentation is both a strength and a weakness. It makes decapitation impossible, but coordination fragile. Iran's crisis does not exist in a vacuum. Iran sits at the crossroads of energy markets, Asian supply chains, Middle Eastern security. More sanctions mean oil supply volatility, higher energy prices, pressure on emerging markets. Asia watches closely. China and India rely on Iranian energy quietly, strategically. A destabilized Iran forces recalculations across Asia, Europe, the global south, and every escalation tightens the knot between economics and war. Final word, the point of no return. Here's the truth few governments want to say out loud. You can crush protests. You can black out the internet. You can kill leaders. But you cannot erase collapse of legitimacy. Iran's people are not just angry. They are exhausted. Exhausted by inflation. Exhausted by repression. Exhausted by being told their suffering is someone else's fault. Whether this uprising succeeds or fails in the short term, something irreversible has already happened. Fear is cracked. And once fear breaks, history accelerates. The Islamic Republic may survive this moment, but it will never be the same. Because when a system must rule by darkness, it has already lost the light. Biggest battles of this century may not be fought with tanks or jets, but with protests, power grids, internet cables, and the will of ordinary people who decide they have nothing left to lose. We uncover the stories governments hope you ignore. Subscribe to the channel and share this video.